my aunt, who's not my blood aunt, her blood brother came with me on this tour. So he's kind of an uncle, brother, cousin. But anyways, he came on this tour, and by day 4, he woke up and said before the tour he thought it was kind of expensive, but he could go home now and feel like he got his money's worth. We were just seeing so much, and we were getting so much information that it was really worth every penny of it. And the tour that we went on was a little expensive. It was kind of hard for me to afford. So the one that I'm planning now, one of my main goals is to make it cheaper. So I'll give you more information on that later. This is Chorazin, or Chorazin, however you'd like to pronounce it. One is correct and the other is probably wrong. This is one of the 3 major cities in Galilee, and it was one of the 3 cities in Galilee that Jesus pronounced a curse on at that time when they rejected him as the Messiah and he stopped offering the kingdom. He said, "Woe to you, Capernaum, woe to you, Chorazin, and woe to you, Bethsaida, because I've performed more miracles here than in any other city, and you have rejected me." So this little city of Chorazin, we don't have a single record in the biblical text of any miracle that he performed here, but Jesus did state that the majority of his miracles were performed in this city and 2 others. There is a prominent and very well-preserved 1st century synagogue in Chorazin, so it's a place worth visiting. This is a replica of a ceremonial seat outside of the temple, and it had a very specific purpose. This is where the grandfather would sit and hold a newborn baby on the 8th day, while the father performed a circumcision on the child. So this is a circumcision chair. This is inside the synagogue, and you can see it's a little different from the synagogue at Capernaum. It's not quite as large and white. In fact, it's a different kind of stone rather than sandstone or marble. They're using basalt, because this is one of the stones that's found there in the northern region of the Sea of Galilee from the Golan Heights, which is a volcanic range. They have a lot of basalt. So these synagogues that Jesus would have been teaching in and traveling to would have had this darker stone, more likely. And this very well could have been the architecture of the very synagogue that Jesus performed miracles in Chorazin. We also got to make a few little friends in Chorazin. These are rock hyraxes, which in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they're called conies. So if you're reading, and I think it's in Jeremiah and maybe in Kings as well, about conies, this is a coney. And there were some baby conies as well. They're pretty cute, but they got some nasty teeth, so I wouldn't recommend trying to pet one. All right, on day 4, we started at Chorazin on our way north into the Golan Heights, and we made our way first, after Chorazin, to the northern military stronghold. This is Tel Hatzor, and it's in the area of Naphtali, and they conquered it first under Joshua, and it was a strategic point in which they were able to see all the valleys around them, especially looking down into the Hula Valley, which leads into the Jordan Valley, and you've got the Valley of Kings on the one side, and you've got the Valley of the Sea, or the Highway of the Kings on one side, and the Highway of the Sea on the other side. So it's a very strategic place for them to have a military base. The construction of the oh, this is still day 3. Yeah, I forgot to change that. This is day 4, not day 3. Tel Hatzor. The construction of the ruins here It's called a Solomonic Gate entering into this stronghold city. So this was refurbished at one point by Solomon. Some of the original architecture is Hittite architecture. So when they conquered it from under Joshua, when Joshua and his the Exodus generation, when they first conquered the area of Naphtali, they conquered this Hittite stronghold and they took what was there and they built on top of it. Solomon refurbished it. Ahab had the hand in refurbishing it even more, especially in getting a more secure water source to it, which again included drilling down through the bedrock. You can also see one of the very large trees that they've found here. This is getting up close to the area of Tyre. And if you remember, it was the king of Tyre that sent cypress trees and cedar trees down to Solomon in order to build the temple. So that's one of those trees. This is some of the old Hittite ruins at the very center of the tell. You can see their old walls. All of the New Mexicans were getting very excited because it's basically adobe, and so they were teaching our tour guide what adobe is. I think they thought he was more interested than he was, but I think he was interested a little bit. This is the modern stairway down into the bedrock to get to the water source. Over here you can see the old way down, which Ahab had constructed. I was very glad not to have to take these stairs down, but we got very nice stairs that all of our elderly folk were able to get up and down no problem as well. But just down in there, you can see some people's faces down there. That's where the drilling through bedrock stopped because they reached water. And here's the view from the top of the tell where they're able to look through the valley. This is looking west there. And part of the Solomonic gate, somebody would have stood here in order to protect the gate from being entered. And along the side, there's 3 more internal gates where people would have stood in case somebody gets past the first guard and gets actually into the entryway to the city. There's 3 guards on each side of the pathway to stop you from getting any further. More pictures of the valley over here. I'm going through here. This is the Hula Valley. And the Hula Valley is one of the main highways, I guess, migration paths for all of the European, Russian, Eastern European birds that migrate between Europe and Africa. This is in the African Rift Valley. So it goes all the way up into Europe and all the way down to the southern portions of Africa. And so they get all kinds of birds flying through here. Moving up a little further north, we've got Tel Dan. This is not called Dan because of the tribe of Dan. It was called Dan before the tribe of Dan ever existed. Dan in Hebrew means judge. So this was the city of the judges. But it existed before Abram even entered into the land of Canaan. It was called Dan even then. Damascus was in the area as well. That predates Abram. And this gate is one that Abram would have passed through necessarily because it was the major city in the northern region. And we're told in Genesis 14 that he went through here in order to chase the 4 kings from the east out of the land of Canaan, rescue Lot and the king of Sodom and these kings that had ransacked Gomorrah, Zeboim, and Admah. He chased them through this area, probably would have even come through this gate on his way from Haran into the land of Canaan in the first place. And so this gate dates to 2000 BC, possibly even earlier, before Abram ever came into the land. So just a few years within 2, 3, 400 years after the flood and the Tower of Babel. That's how old this gate is. So, a very cool recent discovery in the northern part of Israel. And since then, they went back a little further from the city gate, and they found the rest of the city as well, and they've been unearthing it ever since. So we kept going north there from Tel Dan into the foothills of Mount Hermon to a place called Caesarea Philippi, which is where Jesus ended up about just a few months before the crucifixion. He had taken his disciples with him up to Mount Hermon. It's around here, after he gets down from Mount Hermon, that he once again casts out a demon causing muteness, just adding evidence on top of evidence that he is the Messiah. But it's here in Matthew 16 where Jesus, or where Peter, he asks Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter confesses, "You are the Christ, or the Messiah, the Son of the living God." So he confesses his faith in who Jesus is, and Jesus probably picks up a pebble from this river and says, "You are Peter," and that's Petros. And then he says, "But on this lithos," and he's looking up here, up to this great stone up here. He says, "But upon this lithos, I will build my assembly, or I'll build my church." And he's using a word picture here. Jesus does this all the time. We'll talk about this actually, how Jesus uses word pictures to explain things to his disciples so that they can understand. He uses the things around them. And so he's essentially saying, "You, Peter, are little, but the confession that you just made is huge. And upon that huge confession, that's going to be the basis of the assembly I'm going to build, which is the truth that I am the Messiah, the Son of the living God." But anyways, this is Caesarea Philippi at the location of the Grotto of Pan. This is the headwaters of the Jordan River. So the waters begin here in the foothills of Mount Hermon. They travel down into the Sea of Galilee, and it goes from the Sea of Galilee into the Jordan River and empties into the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea empties into nothing. That's why it's a Dead Sea. It's stagnant. Water enters in, nothing gets out. Water evaporates, and all the minerals stay where they are. They can't flow through. And so it gets horribly stagnant and filled with salt minerals, and it smells bad, and it's hot. Beautiful, but stay in the bus. This is the Grotto of Pan. It was also nicknamed at that time and by locals, the Gates of Hell. So this was the first of 3 times I got uncomfortably close to going to hell while I was in Israel. Second time was at the Dead Sea because it felt like hell. But this was a Greek pantheon up here, and they had Pan was the god of, I think he was the Greek equivalent of the Roman god Bacchus, which was the god of wine. Again, I'm a Bible scholar, not a mythology scholar, so I don't remember exactly what he was the god of, but up here they had a little pagan temple where it's, as the myth or the history goes, when Pan would play his flute, or when anyone would play Pan's flute, they had goats up here, and when they would play the flutes, the goats would dance. So sounds pretty demonic to me, but I guess they enjoyed that. So here's he's not our tour guide, he's the guy we went with. This is what I'm going to be doing when we take a tour there. What he's doing here is he's reading Matthew 16 to us and explaining the confession of Peter and its significance for the church. Uh, Now, from that, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, and they went further up the mount. They went up to, I have a picture of it here. Yeah, they went up a little higher onto this mountain. The Grotto of Pan is just over here a little bit. They continued up, and when Jesus was up on this mountain with these 3 disciples, he transfigured before them. He shed the veil of his flesh so that his glory that he had before the beginning of the earth was visible, so that they could see the glory that he was coming in his kingdom. Jesus was revealed to them in his Shekinah glory. And once he had done this, and Moses and Elijah had appeared beside him and were talking with him for a while, it was at that point that Jesus turned around and began heading towards Jerusalem. And it was here for the first time that he told his disciples, I am going now to Jerusalem so that they can kill me. Peter didn't like that very much, and he said, no way, no how. And Jesus told him, get behind me, Satan. So this is where Jesus' ministry took another turn, where he began heading to the cross. This is a valley of the Golan Heights. You can see it goes down over the hillside into the Sea of Galilee, eventually quite a ways down there. You can't see it in this picture. But this is the Golan Heights, which Israel recovered from Syria in the 6-Day War. So this used to be all Syria. This is actually looking out into Syria. So I can't remember exactly where the border markers are, but it's not too far into this valley. It transitions from Israel to Syria. This lake, for instance, would be in Syria. I think even this lake is in Syria. There's a UN checkpoint somewhere around here, maybe out of the picture. So we're looking into the Damascus Valley here. You can see Damascus is just 65 kilometers away. My math's right, that's like 40 miles. Maybe not even that far. And you can barely see Damascus. It is, you see this windmill that's got orange on it rather than just being white. Just above that is Damascus. So the significance for the Bible of this, other than other events that happened in Damascus, is this is where the Damascus Road is. It's leaving Israel and entering towards Damascus, and this is probably where Paul encountered the risen Jesus Christ for the first time and was converted. So this is the Damascus Road, somewhere in this valley, or all through the valley. Paul was converted somewhere there. And this is a picture of me with Mount Hermon in the background, Lebanon on the left, Syria on the right, and me standing here in Israel. And that's all we have for now. Later I'll show you a picture of me in Jordan. So like I said, just don't have enough time in one evening to show you everything, because I mean that was just 4 days and we were there for 17 days. So at some point, probably not next week because we want to finish Revelation, but next time we look at Israel, I'll show you Bet Shean, where King Saul was hanged on a wall after he was killed on Mount Gilboa. I'll show you the Qumran caves where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. We'll see Masada, which was one of King Herod's magnificent palaces built on top of an island mountain top. This was also where, during the Jewish revolt, before the sack of Jerusalem, while Jerusalem was under siege by the Romans, a contingent of Jews fled to the city of Masada, and they held out there for, I think, 2 years on this mountaintop in Herod's palace. They were very successful, but sadly eventually succumbed to the siege. I'll show you the Dead Sea. You won't feel it, unfortunately, but you will see it. It is worth experiencing, but there are no pictures of me floating in the Dead Sea because I did not want to get in the water. We will see Beersheba, which is back up out of the valley, and this is the southern military stronghold. It's also where Abraham's well was, where he made a covenant with Abimelech. And we'll see Maresha, which is an underground city. That was pretty cool. Tel Gezer, which I have a few pot shards from. It's a newly excavated Tel, and in fact, I gave you wrong information. Beersheba is not the southern stronghold. Tel Gezer was the southern stronghold. Beersheba was the southern point in Judah. But it was where Abimelech and Abram made a covenant. And in fact, Abram, Isaac, and Jacob all had episodes of their life occur here in Beersheba. Tel Gezer was the southern military stronghold. And then we spent 7 days in Jerusalem. So there's lots to show you from Jerusalem. And we spent 3 days in Jordan as well, including seeing Mount Nebo, where Moses got to see into the promised land, but not got to go. Got to see all the way down to Zoar and all the way up to Mount Hermon. So it's an incredible view from there. We saw the Arnon Valley, where Edom was separated from Moab. We got to see the Seir mountain range and Mount Hor, where Aaron died and his priesthood was passed on to his son. Got to see this mountain range where the children of Israel circled for 38 years. Of course, we got to go in and see Petra and explore that whole site, so there's lots of pictures to see there. And we went north from there into Jerish. Jerish? Is that the name of that? Yeah, Jerish. It was called Gerasa in the New Testament, and that is where the demoniac that Jesus cast all the demons out, he was from that city, Gerasa. And it was probably one of the very early cities that had converts, because an interesting episode, again, that occurred in the New Testament where Jesus cast out the demons from this man and he sent them into pigs, and he sent the pigs off the hillside into the lake. And so, of course, the people didn't want him around because he's ruining their means of gathering an income from these pigs. So they say, get out of here. Well, he goes away, and when he comes back, he finds that their attitude towards him has changed, and now they're welcoming him, and he begins teaching them, and it gets late, and so he feeds 4,000 people on the Gentile side of the lake. He did 5,000 on the Jewish side of the lake, but these people were from Gerasa because presumably the witnesses to this event, including the exorcism of the demoniac. If you remember, the demoniac wants to go with Jesus. He wants to be a disciple, and Jesus tells him, no, I'm not taking Gentiles. But this Gentile would go back into the city of Jerish or Gerasa and tell them what happened. And Jesus had a welcome wagon waiting for him when he got back to that side of the lake the next time. So they were probably converts in Jerish, well before there were converts in other Gentile regions. But in the Gospels, you see as well that often, well before Jesus is even crucified, the gospel is already spreading into Gentile areas, and it's because of episodes like that. And so we'll also see I'll show you pictures of the riverside where Jacob wrestled with an angel. We'll see the hillsides of Tishbe, where Elijah was from, and then the Jordan crossing, and that'll be it. So there's lots yet to go. We're just 4 days into showing you this magnificent trip, and hopefully it's already starting to put a bug in your ear about going to Israel.